Hey everyone, today we are going to talk about evaluating and using sources. This is an important lesson because in your life you're going to have to look through a lot of sources, whether they're websites or newspapers, ads, things like that, and you have to figure out if they're good sources or bad sources. So we're going to get into this a little bit. So when we're looking at sources, when we're looking at websites or different things like that, books, we want to figure out if they're accurate, right? We want good information. So there's kind of four major things you want to keep in mind: perspective, bias, accuracy, and credibility. And we're going to kind of break these down here right now to kind of talk about how these different factors affect a source being accurate or not. So the way I kind of like to remember those four words is Pete's Bunny ate cookies. If you remember Pete's Bunny ate cookies, hopefully you can remember perspective, bias, accuracy, and credibility. Pete's Bunnies ate cookies. Okay, perspective, bias, accuracy, and credibility. So we're going to start with perspective here. So if you look down here at the bottom, perspective is a person's particular point of view, right? So if that is your perspective. So the way I see something might not be the same as the way somebody else sees something, but that's what perspective is all about, right? So perspective can vary from person to person. So not my perspective might be different than Miss File or Mrs. Dunn, right? My perspective might be different. So it can vary from person to person. It's not always right or not always wrong because it's your own perspective. It might be influenced based on where you live or maybe people in your life. And other factors can also influence your perspective, like your religion or your education or what school you go to, your race, your age, and different life experiences can also change your perspective. So let's use this as an example, okay? When we're talking about point of view and perspective, let's use an example of a town, right? So a town has the opportunity to build a local community college. That's our situation here, right? A town has the opportunity to build a local community college. So what might be some different perspectives of people in the town about a community college? So if a community college might be developed in your town, what might your perspective be, or what might perspectives of others be, okay? So let's take a look at this little chart here. So a town has the opportunity to build a local community college. So if you are an elderly person, you might be worried that the building or a community college will cause traffic in town to increase, which means you're probably against building a community college. A community college might be a more affordable option for my son rather than living at a college away from home. So if you're a parent of a college student, your perspective might be positive, right? You might want to build a community college near you because then your son is able to go there, right? So high school students, if they want to live at home, this would be great for them. A surgeon says the land and money used to build the community college would be better used to build a new updated hospital. So they probably are against it because they want to use that land for something else. And then if you're the mayor of the town, that would obviously bring a lot of new jobs to your area and different things around your area that might bring people in, so you're probably going to be in support of a community college. So you can see here, different people have different perspectives. And then when we're looking at sources, websites, articles, newspapers, things like that, some of them are contemporary and some of them are historic. Contemporary means they belong right now in the present. So things that have happened recently would be contemporary sources. And historic sources would be things that happened a little bit longer ago in the past. So you can have articles, letters, diaries, political cartoons, newspapers, and many more types of sources. So I want you to take this right here, and I want you to read through these three quotes. So I'm going to try to get this guy out of the way here. So if you're looking at quote A, quote B, and quote C, all right, I want you to figure out which perspective is going to match here. So it says, government should be strict and absolute in its system of rewards and punishments. Which of those would match up with that? Which of those, A, B, or C? All right, moving on to the next one. As head of government, a ruler should rule by setting a good example for his or her people to follow. Would that be A, B, or C? And last but not least, the people have the ultimate source of power in a government and are therefore the real rulers. Excuse me. A, B, or C is right there. All right, good. Hopefully you're starting to make sense of perspective here. Man, I have a little bit of a cold here. All right, so then when you're looking at these sources, you can also separate which ones are historic and which ones are contemporary. So in this case, we see that A and C are pretty historic because they both take place in BCE, where this B right there in the middle is a little more contemporary because it's in the Common Era. So we can use those dates to kind of figure out which ones are more historic and which ones are contemporary. The next letter is bias. All right, bias kind of works with perspective. So a bias is an attitude that favors some ideas or people over others. So with elections and things like that, a lot of times people say that certain articles or certain people are biased, which means that they are always going to favor a certain perspective. So you want to look for bias. So if you're reading a certain website that maybe favors a certain group of people at certain times, you might be cautious about how much information you pull from that website because bias is everywhere. So if you are reading something that is going to be skewed towards someone else's perspective always, that might not be the most reliable source. You want to try to find unbiased sites that present information as facts and not as opinions. Accuracy is probably the big one, though. So we were trying to figure out if sources are accurate. Can we trust these sources? So accuracy refers to how correct a source is with their details. So if I'm looking at a source, I want to figure out, is this correct or is this not correct? So to check for a source's accuracy, you need to answer these questions. Can it be verified by other sources? Can I look at other sources and figure out if this is true? Where did the author get their information? Is the information original or is it pulled from a different source? Did they reprint it or excerpt it from something else? And how does that source compare with others on the same exact topic, right? So looking at these situations here, we're trying to figure out if these statements can be verified, right? Can I look it up to figure out if it's true or not? So let's look at this first one. More Americans died in World War II than the Vietnam War. Yes, that statement could be verified. I can see if this is true by Googling it, right? I can look at other websites to figure out if that's an actual true fact because I can figure out how many people died in each war, right? Where if this one at the bottom says the United States should have never fought in the Vietnam War, well, that's more of an opinion, right? That's not necessarily a fact. So I'm not going to be able to verify that and check other sources to see if that's true or not, okay? Moving forward a little bit. What are the author's sources of information? So this statement says excerpts from the United States Geological Survey reported that melting ice in the Arctic has reached the sea level of a half an inch. Okay, we know that this is probably a reliable source because it's a government organization. All right, it's actual information that's coming from the government. Where in this one down here, it says many people online say that the California will one day fall into the ocean because of all the earthquakes. Well, many people saying that is not necessarily a factual site, right? So it says California does have many earthquakes, but people online are not always a reliable source. So things that you're finding in social media or on the news or different things, there might not always be factual. It might be hearsay or people that have their own perspectives. So we want to be able to back up our information when we're looking at accurate sources here. All right, guys. I'm going to skip past this one, okay, but you can look that over if you want to. I want to talk real quickly about the difference between an excerpt and a larger print, right? So if I was looking at right here, this is a student council speech from a school's website. So this is the full speech. But then down here, there's a student newspaper that brought part of the speech into their article. So if you're pulling part of a larger print into your whatever you are producing, that's going to be called an excerpt, right? So down here, she quotes the speech up here, but this is not the full speech. So we don't really have the full perspective of what this student was saying in her student council speech. So sometimes we have to be careful. If it's an excerpt, we might not always know what the full perspective was truly about. So be careful on that as well. And then the last thing, when we're comparing different topics, we want to look at many different articles. So if I need to do research on earthquakes, I don't want to just look at one website. I want to look at 5 different websites to see if they all agree with each other. And if they all agree with each other, it's probably a true fact and it's probably going to make it more accurate. If one says that earthquakes happen every day in a certain place and another 5 of them say that earthquakes happen every month, then I'm probably going to trust the one that says month because there's more sources that agree with that statement, right? So we want to look at other sources of the same topic to try to figure out what is what and to figure out what is accurate and what is not accurate, right? And that really is going to boost your credibility, which is our final letter here. Credibility is how much you can trust or believe in a source. So if a source is credible, that means I can trust it, it can be verified, it's accurate, it's unbiased, and all of those other letters are going to come into play here. So some website endings, when you're looking at websites, here's some endings that you see often: .gov, .com, .org, .edu, .net, right? And some of those you are pretty used to, right? Not all of them are inaccurate, not all of them are accurate. Sometimes you can find a good .com site and sometimes you can have a really bad .com site. So you have to be careful of endings. Something good to know though is that .com, .org, and .net are all websites that can be purchased by anyone. So when you're looking at these websites, you want to make sure you're looking at them carefully to make sure that you feel like they are accurate before you start using them in a paper or using them to defend your answer as evidence. Whereas .gov and .edu typically are government or education organizations that have to have a little bit more of a process to verify their website. So that means they're probably a little bit more reliable right off the get-go. Okay, so remember today, Pete's Bunny ate cookies. When you're looking at sources, you want to look at the perspective. What do they believe about the topic? Do you want to see if it's biased? Do they favor one view versus another? You want to see if it's accurate. Okay, can we verify information? Can we check other sources? And we want to see if it's credible. Can we trust that source? All right, guys, thanks for sticking with me today. I know that was quick. If you have any questions or you want more examples, we're going to practice this again next week, but feel free to email me at any time. All right, guys, have a great day.